Good evening, fellow Plexers. We are in my unfinished basement at my bench systems. I have my new Ugreen NAS sitting there. I have my 11th gen Intel NUC sitting there with a test of Unraid on it. And I just booted into Ubuntu on my HP Pro Desk that has an i5-9500 in it, and I have a whole bunch of different hard drives with different OS installs on here. I was running a Ubuntu Kazaa OS install, and I've just live booted into Ubuntu because I've popped in a 500 gigabyte NVMe drive and then two rusty hard drives, 1 gig each in the different sizes, 2.5 and 3.5 SATA drives. And I'm going to install ZimaOS, which is built on Kazaa OS. But what I like to do is I like to get rid of all information on a drive first, which is why I'm live booted into Ubuntu and I've gone to disk. So I'm going to select the NVMe drive and I'm just going to hit the X to delete everything, one partition at a time. All right, we're almost done with this drive. And I should have brought my tripod down. So let's get rid of let's see, can I get rid of this? Let's do a format. What can I do here? I haven't run into this before. There was a RAID 1 volume created with these two drives. I guess all I can do is format them. EXT is fine. Well, they don't want to format. I haven't run into that before. So 1 terabyte RAID array, maybe disk can do something with that instead of the individual drives. Well, I know this is boring, so skip ahead. I'll list the spot to skip ahead to in the description if you want to check that. You can hear that action. At least I heard a little bit of rumbling. Well, I'm going to just leave it at that. This boot disk is erased. And we'll go from there. So let's shut this down. This is a Corsair, I don't know if it's 256 gigabytes or 512, I can't remember. And we'll plug this flash drive in. And we'll start up, and the boot key on this system is F9. All right, we're entering the boot menu. And we'll boot off the general U disk. Should have wore a black t-shirt instead of a gray one. So with the Ventoy flash drive, I got as far as that. Okay, so we're going to pick one to install ZimaOS, and we'll use the Sabrent Rocket NVMe drive. Answer yes, and it's installing. If I didn't mention it, I use balenaEtcher as the program to make this a bootable ZimaOS flash drive. You can use balenaEtcher to boot almost anything. Now on this with Ventoy, I have a whole bunch of different Linux distros on there. I have a Windows 11 and a Windows 10 ISO on there. I've got everything but the kitchen sink on there. Memtest, everything you might need to take a look at a PC or to play around with different operating systems. And not every Linux OS has a live boot. The common ones do. Almost all the Ubuntu flavors do. Zorin OS, Elementary, Mint, Pop OS. Fedora is a live boot. What else is a live boot? OpenSUSE is a live boot. There's a lot of Linux you can check out with a live boot. And that's usually the best for your hardware. You can do a VM if you want. If you're already running Linux, you can install a program or an application called Boxes. And that is great for doing a VM. Okay, so we can remove the install media. Hit OK, and we'll reboot. Should be a quick boot. Then I can move to my desktop PC upstairs. So again, this is a better install for someone who wants to have some RAID redundancy for their storage. Unfortunately, there's no RAID redundancy on the boot NVMe. That would be perfect. If you run unRAID, because unRAID boots off a flash drive, and on this system, I'm actually booting off a micro SD card in a USB reader because unRAID locks to the USB drive. And in this case, it locks to the SD card reader, which will never go bad, which means you can make easy SD card backups of your boot files. And unRAID allows you to have a SSD volume 1, what they call a cache pool, to run your Docker containers on. Okay, so this is what we need here. We need that URL, and we'll access that and set up ZimaOS on my desktop PC running Pop OS upstairs. Be right back. And I'm back at my desktop PC, and I purposely booted into Ubuntu 24.05 instead of my default install of Pop OS, because it's based on Ubuntu 22.04. And whether it's all Ubuntu 22.04 distros or just Pop OS, you need SMB1 support enabled on the NAS in order for the file browser to see the share. I don't have to worry about that in Ubuntu 24.04, so that's what I'm using here. So let's start up a web browser, and let's go to that address. Okay, welcome to ZimaOS. I'll accept the policy, the language is good. Now I need to pick a username and a password. So I'm going to pick my own name and just a simple password for the purposes of this video. You should use secure passwords on everything. And let me go here. Secure passwords are not hard to pick. So, if we check this password, it'll probably only be hours for a computer to crack. 2 minutes, not even hours. Well, let's see what we can do here. Throw in a random year. It's not my birth year, but it's the birth year of a friend of mine. And let's just do is freaking cool! Exclamation point. Want to guess how many years that takes to crack? Let's get rid of the spaces. Eight, 9 million years. So what if you just type I like Plex. Let's do it without spaces. I like Plex better than MB. Now a lot of systems will make you put in uppercase here or a number there or a special character. Look how long that is. So if you put a 1 and a number sign there, it's not hard to come up with easy to remember passwords that are really hard to crack. So what I would suggest, and I know this is off the top of Plex, but for someone like me that uses Google services, I have a super long, easy for me to remember password for Gmail. And I have another one like this that's easy for me to remember for my bank. Every other password should be different. And then most of the other passwords, they're in this range. And then I keep all my passwords in a Google Doc, and Google remembers everything for me. And of course, my phone is set up so that if somebody else gets a hold of it, they can't open it, so they can't get into my Google Doc to see my passwords. So anyway, that's my little password thing. I think they're important. Security is always important. So we can start ZimaOS from files or from the App Store. I'm going to go to the dashboard. So they're advertising the Zima Cube. It's kind of your own NAS. Throw your hard drives in, install Zima. It's pretty expensive. For the same price, I might be looking at a 6 or 8 bay Ugreen NAS. So let's just click through. Remote access can be achieved. I've never used PearDrop before, so maybe that's something I'll check out later. And there's an option to download Zima clients. Let's see what they have for that. Oh, that's a Windows client. That's useless to me. Okay, so where do we want to go? We want to add our storage. So I can just click on the gear under the storage widget. And actually, it found the storage that I had already set up. So let's see, can I destroy this easily? My right click is for the browser. So this is what I was trying to get rid of in the live boot of Ubuntu. So let's create RAID 1. Let's see if we can do that with these two drives. We can. All right, so I'm back to square one. So this is the small laptop drive, and this is the larger desktop drive. Two different brands, both 1 terabyte. And let's give this the name of Plex storage. But, you know, I'm just so used to not using any uppercase letters. I'm actually going to call this Rusty Storage. That works better for me. I'm aware that all the files on the disk will be deleted. And don't turn the system off until it finishes. And if we continue to run in the background, right here it tells us that it's creating the RAID 1 array, and well, it says 1 minute left. It should be a couple hours. Maybe my playing around earlier with ZimaOS was going to speed something up. I thought that I'd be coming back in a few hours to finish this video, but this might be cool if it's done as quick as it says it will be. So for a couple 1 terabyte drives, expect a little over 2 hours, almost 2.5 hours normally. All right, while that's working, let's start the file browser. Other locations. So you see, this is from me screwing around earlier. So we'll get rid of that. You see my new Ugreen NAS. You see my bench system with Unraid on it. You see my regular Unraid install that has no Rusty storage. It's a Docker host install only for my Plex container that points back to my newer Synology NAS. You see my very old My Cloud device, Western Digital single drive NAS. Here's Zima. There's nothing to connect to yet. And then you see both my Synology NAS models. All right, so this says 5 hours and 33 minutes left. So we are going to have to stop the video and come back. But let me talk about a few things before I do. So in KazaOS, if I had clicked the files, I was right within the same interface. Now if I do it, a new browser tab opens up, and we're going to see the boot drive, ZimaOS-HD. So here's the Rusty storage, but there's really not room to put anything there yet. But we can add a folder at this stage. So that's usually what I name a shared folder on another NAS system. And while we're here, we can click the three dots and we can share via Samba. Now, Time Machine is something to do with Apple. I'm not an Apple guy, so it's nothing I'm going to check. And this is where you need to decide if you want read, write, or read only access. For a headless setup in the corner someplace to then copy media to from another computer, maybe your Windows computer, maybe your Linux computer, you got to have read-write access. Okay, so now that it's been shared, we have this symbol here. So I can go back into the three dots, manage Samba share, and let's go back to my file manager window, the files window. While this is open, let's make that full screen. Now with my Synology NAS, I just click in, give it the password, and I have access to all the shared folders. Same thing with my older Synology NAS. And should be the same with the older Unraid or the test Unraid. Let's see if we can do the same thing with Zima. Let's create a new folder. I can't do it. It didn't even ask me for any permissions to access this. So let's go back here and let's use the Mac OS Finder address. I've just copied that. And actually, let's bring this on screen too. All right, let's get rid of that extra stuff that I did. Username and password. So I'm going to paste that address in here and click connect. And I could create the folder. Now, this is a holdover, I think, from me already playing around with ZimaOS, where this file browser was already given access. So you would have to put your credentials in at this point. All right, so now that we have access, we could copy media over to this structure. So let's go back to this interface. So let me get rid of this. All right, so I'm going to treat this like a shared folder. I probably should have just named it media. But for a simple setup, this can act as like a folder instead of a shared folder. So let's get rid of this test folder. And then let me recreate. I don't think there's enough room to start copying things in, but let me create a structure for TV libraries. So this is shared. Anything below it will be shared too. All right, let's try the import. Well, I can't import from my local system. It looks like maybe I can, I just don't know how. So let me do it through this browser. I'm a Pop OS user, new tab, home. I use the same group of public domain media for all my test servers. So inside that sort folder, let's see how small this is. .1 gigabyte. We should be able to fit that. Copy, and we'll put it inside this folder. Now if we go back to ZimaOS and we go into storage, copying things over before the array is fully built is going to slow that process down, which is why we jumped up to 3 hours and 2 minutes. So that should drop down to, again, once it settles down a little bit. But we do have media on this NAS now. So I really don't have to wait until the array is ready to get Plex server installed, because Plex is going to get installed on the boot drive, not the rusty array. So let's go to the App Store. We'll search for Plex. So you're going to see a lot in either CasaOS or ZimaOS by Big Bear CasaOS. I'm not going to install this version of Plex. I don't know anything about it. I already know that this is the Linux server version of Plex, and that's what I use for all my Plex server installs that are inside a Docker container. Now, unfortunately, install doesn't get you where you want to be. You need to do a custom install. All right, so I'm going to leave it on stable because then I'll show you how to upgrade. Plex just had an update, and this is going to do the previous version that we're all running. Latest should get me the latest one, so I'm just going to leave it where it is. So at the end of the process, I can show you how to update under ZimaOS. All right, so this will be the website to access there. It gives you everything you need. And this is where it's a little funky. It wants your media and data media, and that will be on the SSD. So if I go to Files and go to ZimaOS, I don't know why I've got everything. So you could put media in this structure that's already built, but I think that just confuses things. So I'm going to just get rid of this stuff. So in case I look to it in the future, I'm not confused that that's where I should be finding anything. I can leave this media folder with nothing in it. I won't be confused. The media is going to be on the Rusty array someplace. Oh, let's click on the Rusty array. There it is. That's where the media is. Okay, so if I just did the automatic install, the media would be pointed to the wrong spot. So let me change this side first. This is going to be the alias for the real folder structure that we'll see inside Plex when we go to add a library. So I'm going to call that, I can call it Rusty Volume 1 maybe. Or Rusty 1 terabyte RAID 1. You can label these whatever you want. If you have a big case and you're going to add more drives later, just think of how you might name the second, third, and fourth, and then just kind of figure out what you want to go with. But it's just an alias. It doesn't matter. So then on this side, this is where we have to point to the real structure. And right now we're pointed on the boot drive, or at the boot drive. Let's point to the Rusty storage. I'm not even sure if this is a shared media folder. I think it is. So inside that folder, I will point to, let's point to the regular TV show library structure. Select, oh, no. Sorry, I don't want to do that. All right, so the Rusty storage, I want the Plex container to see everything in this folder, and that's where I want to stop. So later on, if I add a music folder structure, other video structure, photo structure, it'll all be right here. I can see everything. All right, this is a loop. Okay, so this manual one doesn't fill in the PUID or PGID numbers for me. It's probably 1,000 for each, so I'm going to cancel this. Now let me just copy that so I don't have to think about it again. All right, so we'll go back in, we'll search for Plex. Now I probably could have dropped to terminal and just run ID to figure those out. But let's do this. Let's install, and then we'll fix it afterwards. Maybe that's easiest. All right, so Plex is going to be installed and running, and we'll shut it down and we'll edit the container configuration. So if it's colorized, it's running. So we'll hit the three dots. We'll hit the off button there. It's doing its thing. And when it's just a black and white icon, oh, well, at least under ZimaOS, it's that way. Oh, there it is. It's grayed out now. So now we'll go into settings. So again, it's using this tag. We'll leave that alone so we can show you how to update it later. Linux server container. The data configuration is correct. Let's give it the same alias we thought of just a little while ago. And now we'll point it to the rusty storage. And the PGID and PUID numbers are now filled in for us. And it also has what it needs to enable hardware acceleration with the Intel driver. And now we can click Save. And that will, well, under ZimaOS, that starts the container up. So I guess we have to open it manually. Well, I guess it was running, but it was just still grayed out. So let's wait until that's up fully. And I guess I don't have to. I know we're already there. So we're accessing the server as a brand new server. ZimaOS, let's call it this. Let's name it after the processor. Let's add 2 TV show libraries. Browse for the media. That's the alias we created. I like to create an alias that stands out like a sore thumb. If you just called it media, you might miss it, or you might not be sure what it is. But call it something unique that describes the array or the drive you're looking at. So I'll point to this folder structure. Because I only name from TVDB, I have to change this advanced setting. By default, Plex pulls episode ordering from the movie database. Occasionally, the ordering is different at TVDB, and seeing I name everything from the TV database, that's what I'll set here. All right, let's add the other TV show library. We'll call it TV-cartoons. Browse the same alias that leads to the rusty array. Pick the TV-kids folder. And this is something I mentioned in a lot of videos. Looney Tunes is a TV show. Isn't a real show. It's a virtual one. It's not listed at the movie database. It is at the TV database. This listing is made up of old Looney Tune movie shorts, with the first one from 1929, which is why the virtual series has the year of 1929. You've got to make that change either globally for the library or at the show level to pull from TVDB aired ordering. So we'll change the episode ordering to make it work. Then I'll click Next. And then you're at the Get the Apps page, and I don't need any more stinking Plex apps. All right, so this is my regular server. Let's change to the libraries I just added. I'll give it remote access later. So here's the regular library. Well, not what I expected. Okay, so we have that one. Let's go into the settings. Library, this one. Let's do scan my library automatically and run a partial scan when changes are detected. And because this is a Linux system, got to point out this warning. Linux systems limit the maximum number of watch directories. This may cause problems with large music libraries. Well, this is kind of a nondescript warning for the Linux IO notify issue. If you have more than 8,192 folders that Plex is trying to watch automatically to detect changes, Plex will go haywire during the scanning process, and you'll pull your hair out, even if you're bald like I am, to figure out what's going on. If you go to Plex's forums or ask me, I have the link to the forum post. It's not easy to find. Chuck PA, Plex's official Plex guru, and especially Linux guru, has a formula you can figure out to see what you should raise your IO notify limit to. But you've got to run this complex formula because there's performance issues if you just raise it an arbitrary amount. Well, it's easy just to turn the automatic scanning off when you get that big and just turn on periodic scan and do it every hour or 2 hours or something. The more powerful your server is, the less you'll notice that it's scanning. Mine's very powerful. I just do it every 2 hours, and if I add something new, I just scan it after I'm done copying the media over. So let's save these settings. Let's go back and see what we can find if we scan this library. All right, maybe I did something wrong. Let's check. Let's go back to Zima for a second. Let's go to Files. Rusty Storage. Let's see if I can see everything in my file manager. Oh, there's nothing there. Nothing scanned because there's nothing there yet. This copied over, but that didn't. Oh, I see what I did. Couldn't remember what I did. I created this structure when I didn't need it. So let's get rid of that. And now let's copy this structure over. I'm 62 and already the brain's slowing down. All right, so we have a minute left. But if we go back into Plex and we start scanning, well, maybe it won't scan until all the files are copied over. $20 out of 66 files. Getting close to halfway there. Let me pause you until we get finished with that. All right, we're down to all the files almost being copied in. Let's see if this will start scanning by itself. Where are we? We're up here. Where did I leave that setting? Well, because Plex is on a different drive, the application, than the media, Maybe the auto scanning won't work. So let's scan manually. I still feel like I'm missing something simple. That's right, I was pointed to the wrong folder. Now it'll scan. That's 2 senior moments I've had doing this video almost on the fly. Okay, so what else can we show before the array finishes rebuilding? Let's update Plex. So if we go into this, we'll see we have a server update available. You click on it, we can see the release notes. Now download does nothing for us because it's going to download just the default Linux deb file, which isn't what we need for a Docker container. But we can see the release notes. And I don't think there's anything Linux involved here, specifically to Linux. So back to ZimaOS. Let's go into the settings for the Plex container. Change this tag to latest. Hit save. We see we're going to work here. Now in the future, you should just be able to hit the 3 dots and check and then update. Let's refresh the web browser. And let's go to the right server. And where are we? We're now up to date on this one. So it's very easy to update. So that's about it. I'll stop this video and come back once we are done with this. So later tonight, 9:30, 10:30, 11, 12, midnight. I'll still be up. I'll finish this off by copying more media to it. And we've already got the link on this install of Ubuntu. Here's the ZimaOS volume, and here's my local volume from home. I'll just be copying these different movie libraries over to it, and actually I'll copy the whole structure over. I don't have anything really. These are just dummy folder names. And same thing for photos. I don't have anything in those dummy folder names. This is the structure I suggest. One shared media folder with all your library folders inside that, and I like a nested setup, so a sort folder for TV show libraries with a TV show library subfolders next. If you've got a dozen different photo subfolders, it's really nice to have them all in this nested structure. Same with other videos. Maybe you've got a folder for all your pre-rolls. Maybe you got a folder for Aunt George and Uncle Betty's wedding, 50th wedding anniversary or something. You know, nobody's going to have just one folder full of 600 pictures. You're going to have them sorted by subfolders. Most likely you're not going to have more than one Plex music library. But I've got it set up in case you're going to have another music library. You can put it right nested with that one. And again, the movie sort folder contains different movie libraries. This is just a test folder. And if you're running a trash guide setup, let's do it here. This is where you would put that folder, and inside you'd have a complete, incomplete, and a watched NZBD folder. Doing that allows you to achieve atomic moves with a future trash guide setup. So I'll get back once the volume in the array is up, and we'll get some 4K media over, and we'll do a test on 4K transcoding. I have one very dense movie that will transcode with this setup down to 720p 4 megabits per second. Be back soon. And I'm back, but it's the next morning. So last night was my night to watch the original The Accountant before watching The Accountant 2, and I was going to come back and finish this video, and I enjoyed the first movie so much I watched half of the new movie last night before I called it quits. So since then, the array finished building. All my media, all my test media is copied to this. And the only change I made without you is I adjusted the time zone. This was set to Europe, London, I think. And I changed the time format to AM, PM. And I discovered that doing that still did not change the temperature displayed in ZimaOS, which isn't bothersome to me. We're all used to CPU and motherboard temperatures in Celsius versus Fahrenheit, for those of us who march to a different temperature drum in the US. So basically I'm done here. I've already showed you how to update this container. Check and then update, pretty easy. The container configuration was easy. The last thing we have to do is add the remainder of the media to Plex. So yesterday I connected this Rusty volume to the web browser of Ubuntu. If I go to other locations, even though I see it here, I don't access it this way. I added the server address down here, and I got that from the files, which now I have two open. Rusty storage, and click here, click manage Samba share, and depending whether you're using a Mac or Linux or Windows, you copy each of these to paste into the right spot of your file manager. Very easy. So I can go in and browse that. So here's all my media. I've got a sort folder for all my movie libraries, sort folder for every type of movie library, and then here's the individual library structures for the movie libraries. So again, we're going to look for the alias that I used that led to this shared folder when we're in Plex server setting up the libraries, just like we did last night. So we'll go to the web app, and I'll change to the correct server, correct test server. And I haven't set remote access up on this yet. I'll go to libraries under manage, and I'll add the main movie library. So here's that alias I set up in the container. I'll pick my movie library sort folder and the main movie library folder. Now, I usually talk about this when I add a movie library. Go into the advanced settings and you can decide if you want to create automatic collections listed at TMDB. So let's go there first. And let's use Back to the Future. I think I do this more often than not. And I've got cap locks on for some reason. Okay, so by keyword match, there's 25 possible movies, 7 TV shows, and you see this collection. So I can enter the collection now, or I can just enter one of the movies. And if we slide down, here's the view of the collection, and this shows you the number of movies in the official collection at TMDB. And the collection already has artwork listed here too. And I'm not sure, Plex may not pull the collection artwork from TMDB anymore. They used to pull movie posters from TMDB until they ran into some problems where some of the artwork at TMDB wasn't licensed for further use, and they had some takedown requests for movie posters. So now they source their movie posters from somewhere else, and I've forgotten who now, but they had all the appropriate licenses in effect. So occasionally you would scan a movie in that I had already scanned in, and you might not have artwork for it. Well, that was due to the issues that were going on in the background. So now if that movie's scanned in, it comes from a different place, and you'll have your poster each and every time. Okay, so back to Plex. So let's add that library again, because I never finished adding it, and we'll talk about the collection settings that you can set to. So under Advanced, there's the minimum automatic collection size that is disabled by default. If you set it to 1, any movie that's part of a collection at TMDB will have that collection created, and you'll have a single movie collection. I like to set it at 2, but you can set it at 3 or 4. If you only want to see automatic collections for bigger franchises, you can set it for 4 if you want. I like to set it at 2, and then there's one more setting. The default setting shows both your movies and your collections in the Library tab. This hide collections but show their items, it only refers to the Library tab, not the Collection tab. So this would show the movies but not the collections, and you'd have to click the Collections tab to see the collections. This one, I kind of like this setting. Hide items which are in collections. So in your Library tab, you'll only see the collection poster and not the movies that are part of the collection. Now, something like the Fast and Furious collection, because not every movie starts with Fast and Furious, like Too Fast and Furious. If somebody was searching your library for Too Fast and Furious, they wouldn't see it if they were manually looking through the library, and they would see it if they used the search function. So there's a little bit of a downside to this, but I like the way it looks better. So that's what we're going to pick, and there's not enough public domain media on this server to have that be effective at all. But that's how I do it for my regular server. All right, so let's do one more library, because we're going to do a 4K transcoding test as promised. So my alias, my movie library sort folder, and the 4K library subfolder. And we'll go in and quickly set the collection up the same way. All right, since I set a test library up last time, it looks like Plex has picked a new movie poster for this movie, and my OCD says no way. No way, Jose. It's got to be something more classic. I like to look for movie posters where you can clearly see the stars' names in them. Any new movie I add, I usually adjust the poster to something like that. Let's back up and go to the 4K library. So this is my only non-public domain movie, but it's the one movie I use for testing out transcodes. And let me just pause you for a second. Okay, I'm back with you. So let's go into the transcoder settings before we do a transcode to this. So we'll go into the wrench, transcoder, and now this is all just default settings. Enable tone mapping is automatically checked. The tone mapping algorithm is Hable. Use hardware accelerated when transcoding is available, and use hardware accelerated video encoding. I'm not going to enable the new HEVC options yet because I want to show you the difference in dashboard. But what I do like to see is I always like to see the iGPU or the GPU in this settings area. So let's get back and get set up for viewing dashboard. And I've got the Plex app running in the background. I don't know how I managed that. And I'll do remote access later. That's not important because nobody's going to be accessing this test server remotely. So let's start the HTPC client app. I've already got it prepped so that the sound of this is turned down in my sound applet in the settings of this server. So let's go find that new library. I have a lot of test libraries. All right, so there's a new 4K library, and I can show any of the public domain media playing. This is in transcode. So the sound's down, so I can't get in trouble when I start the Magnificent 7. But I can get in trouble by showing it, but I can show just enough that we can see how long it takes the transcoded stream to start up. So I'm going to start it, and I'm going to turn on PGS subtitles because they're the harder ones to use with Plex versus the easier text-based SDH subtitle or SRT subtitles. Alright, so the subtitles are on, but they don't always display in dashboard at first. So we see this movie is a high bit rate. It's 192 megabits per second. What I'm going to say next is just my own opinion. I can't find any proof with any Plex support documents or statements at their forums, but it's my belief that when you add a movie to a Plex server at first, the bit rate, or a TV show, the initial bit rate is a peak bit rate. After a while, this will be displayed lower. I think is it 105? Let me go to my default, or actually let me go to another test server. And we'll resume it here. Going to change the dashboard to the right server. Alright, I left that in transcode, the last test I was doing. And direct stream is reported as 104. So after it's on the server for a couple, 2-3 days, somehow it must be indexed to the average bit rate instead of seeing the peak bit rate. Just my theory. It makes sense. All right, now we're going back to the other dashboard server, and we see the higher bit rate. So I just assume that's the peak bit rate. Okay, now after starting and stopping it, the PGS subtitles do show up in dashboard, and it's direct playing. Plex did a lot of work behind the scenes to make these harder to stream subtitles easier to stream. We don't always talk about the successful improvements Plex makes right off the bat. That and HEVC transcoding were two great features they added. All right, so I am going to move this into a 720p 4 megabit per second transcode, which is how I always test this movie. All right, look over here, and it started up pretty quickly on this older 9th gen i5 iGPU. So we see it's transcoded down to 720p through hardware, 4 megabits per second, and the PGS subtitle is still direct streaming, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's take that out of transcode. And we can leave the movie running. Let's go into our transcoder settings. So now I'm going to change this never for HEVC to always. And watch right here when I save changes. We have a new option that pops up, enable HEVC optimization, and I'll save the changes. Now, point of reference, let's go here. All of my test servers have that option except for my older Synology NAS that's running a 7th gen Intel Celeron processor. I can transcode the same 4K movie on this system, and I can do 3 or 4 of them simultaneously on that old 7th gen processor. But notice how this iGPU is HD and not UHD. So a 7th gen desktop Intel processor, I think, is Intel HD graphics. I think it's 530. That older Intel desktop CPU versus the Celeron will also lack the new HEVC settings. So it just takes getting to an 8th gen Intel processor to have those new settings. Now with an 8th through 10th gen Intel iGPU, you can probably do 6 of these streams with this same high bit rated movie, 5 or 6. So that's a little aside. This video is definitely not to just the point of ZimaOS. So we've got everything enabled and we can see the iGPU. So let's go back to our dashboard. And let's put this back into transcode. The same 720p, 4 megabits per second. Look over here to see how long it took to start up. About the same time frame to start up transcoded. We see that the subtitle is still a direct stream, which is fabulous for a PGS subtitle. And we're now using an HEVC stream after it's transcoded. And it's still the same 4 megabit per second transcode. So why this is important, if you're under limited bandwidth conditions, unlike me, I've got gig fiber access here. But if you're using a coaxial ISP, even if you've got gig coming in, with their best service plan, you'd be lucky to have 35 going out. And if you don't have gig service from a coaxial cable provider, you might be limited to someplace between 10 and 15 megabits per second outgoing bandwidth. So an HEVC container is smaller at the same quality level as an H.264. So it's worth it to have the better ability to transcode off a modern Intel iGPU or an NVIDIA GPU. And I can actually show that. Let's see, where do I want to go? This desktop system has a Plex test server running in a container. And if I go to the transcoder settings, you'll see it's using the 3060 chipset in my NVIDIA GPU. And you get the same options here. So that's about it, my Plex friends. ZimaOS was a very successful and easy test server to set up. It gives you the ability to use RAID storage. I do not like that I cannot use a RAID array for the boot drive. There's probably some way to get that going outside of ZimaOS first. They do make little adapters. You can get I think QNAP makes an adapter you can still get where it's a SATA connection on a little housing that holds two NVMe drives. You pop two of the same NVMe drives into that, and that's an automatic RAID 1 configuration to get some redundancy. So this is kind of where I rank things. If you're doing just a simple server with a USB drive or two, use Windows 11 or even Ubuntu with a snap package install of Plex, because that'll see your USB media without having to take a junior college course in Linux permissions. If you want something a little fancier and you want to run a Docker container and you're not really concerned about RAID right now, KazaOS installed under Ubuntu 24.04 is stupidly simple to get going. I've got a video on that. That'll get you into the Docker world. If you want RAID, ZimaOS is probably the next step for your storage. You can build your own little server in any hardware, and you're only limited to the number of hard drives you can have, and then just back up your Plex container. I haven't even thought about talking about that in this video, but someplace we can see where the container is. So if we go to Plex, we don't have to stop it. We can go to settings. The container configuration tells us that this container is in this structure, app data, app data. So if we go to files under ZimaOS and we go to the boot drive, here's the app data folder. Here's Plex config, library, application support. This is the folder to back up. You can back this up manually to secure your Plex install. So I'm glad I mentioned that. So I think the next step up from ZimaOS is Unraid. I have a simple Unraid Plex server going on a little MIDI computer. So this is not using RAID at all, or Unraid's Unraid, because it's Unraid RAID-like scheme. So this has got just one rusty drive as data and one NVMe drive as the cache drive. Now, Unraid calls an SSD volume a cache volume. Two of them would be a cache pool. So it's not like cache being used on a consumer NAS, just different terms. This is a little NUC. It can't hold more than the two drives, so it's just a little test server for Plex. Plex is stupidly easy to get going on this, and it's a great choice for a headless unit to use RAID for your Docker containers, RAID 1, and to use Unraid's RAID-like ability for rusty storage. So much easier to configure than Proxmox or TrueNAS, and this is a bare metal NAS install. Both Proxmox and TrueNAS are called virtualized environments, which means when you install it, you have to install a virtual file server. A lot of people love it. I think they're both hard to configure, and I think Docker containers are just so much easier. Or a consumer NAS like a TrueNAS or a Synology NAS, but the 2025 Synology models need Synology branded hard drives. And I'm kind of on the fence. I think Synology DSM as a NAS operating system is the best there is. And for some people, if money's not an object, get a Synology NAS, branded hard drives. You just can't go wrong, as long as it has the Intel Celeron processor in it for hardware accelerated transcoding. It's an old 9th gen CPU they're still using, but it's just as powerful as what we've demoed in this 9th gen Intel processor. So after Unraid, it's a consumer NAS, and I really, after 2 weeks, I would not discourage anybody from buying a Ugreen NAS. This little 4-bay plus model is fantastic. I was able to put 2 supported NVMe drives in and create a RAID 1 volume to run the Plex Docker container on. With a media server, you don't need to use these slots as read-write cache. Create a volume for Docker containers. That'll be the best speed boost you can get. And then throw some drives in, some decent Western Digital Red or Iron Wolf drives for your storage, and go to town. I've got a video showing how it's really not that hard to get a Plex Docker container going on this setup. So this is kind of more of a premier headless setup. Lots of ways to run Plex, and I'm trying to have videos on all of them for you. So I know this is kind of a sloppier video. It covers a lot of extra stuff, but that's my style. Like it or love it or hate it. All I want to do is get you from point A to B in a successful manner, but it's not always the most efficient manner. So, thanks for watching, and happy Plexing. And if you try ZimaOS, let me know what you think of it. I think it's a nice little upgrade from KazaOS, and I love that you can easily add RAID storage. Thanks for watching, and happy Plexing.